Good evening and thanks for joining us on the Week in Review. I'm Nick Blumberg. A meeting of Chicago's Police Oversight Commission turns tumultuous as protesters call out CPD Superintendent Larry Snelling.
CPD! KKK! I see either hold the same!
Snelling's long-awaited appearance centered on whether Chicago police aided federal immigration agents, with the top cop arguing his officers kept anti-ICE demonstrators safe.
It is a responsibility I carry with the weight of every student's future in mind.
After nearly a year, Chicago Public Schools finally has a permanent leader with the elevation of interim CEO Magewell King. Meantime, Mayor Brandon Johnson moves to oust the head of the Chicago Housing Authority Board and claims commissioners broke the law in hiring a new CEO against Johnson's wishes. And
they've accomplished something, and it's not just another tournament or event.
the Fighting Illini gear up for their first Final Four appearance since 2005. And now to our Week in Review panel. Joining us are Justin Lawrence of Crane's Chicago Business, Araceli Gomez-Saldana of WBEZ, Elvia Malagon of the Chicago Sun-Times, and Mike Mulligan of 104.3 The Score. Thank you all for being here. Let's get right to it. So Justin, you broke that story about the leadership fight at the Chicago Housing Authority. Haven't had a permanent CEO for a year and a half. Last month we find out the board hires Keith Pettigrew out of DC. Why does the mayor claim that move wasn't legit?
Because he doesn't like it.
All right.
You know, this is a chaotic situation. The mayor says he was caught off guard by this. He says it violated the Open Meetings Act, which governs, you know, public meetings in the state. And he says, kind of in a confusing way, that the acting head of the CHA never really had that authority anyway. So they couldn't take that issue on, and they couldn't sign a contract, and it's all leading to a very confusing place where the mayor says, essentially, there is no single person actively in charge of the CHA right now. And Matt Brewer, who is both the board chair, or was the board chair, and the operating chair, the de facto CEO of CHA, says, that's nice, Mayor, but actually I am, and I'm going to continue to be in charge. And the CEO that we've appointed, Keith Pettigrew, he starts on April 20th. No matter what the mayor said, that's still going forward. So, you know, it puts the mayor in a position where he has to back up these claims, and it probably means he has to take it to court.
Yeah, and it's a weird situation. So he can't remove Matt Brewer from the board. He does have the authority to appoint the chair of the CHA board. And the mayor's claiming this was a unilateral move on Brewer's part, but there was a vote.
It was 7-2, right? And those 6 other commissioners that voted with Brewer have issued a statement standing by their decision. I think the mayor would it's easier to pin it on one person and say this guy was doing it underhanded, and that's why we have to undo all this. But unless he can convince people to go back on what their decision of 2 weeks ago, like I said, it's going to end up in court.
Yeah, it feels like even if you know, he makes this temporary victory, there's still the votes to hire Pettigrew. Yeah. You know, Araceli, does this feel like more of what former Mayor Lori Lightfoot ran into, that sister agencies, that the city council, they're not just going to be rubber stamps anymore?
Yeah, it just adds to a lot of confusion, right? And who's in charge, and how did we get here, right? And so then we start kind of even looking back to some prior decisions that have been made by some of these very same elected officials, and it causes a lot of confusion.
And of course, you know, Elvia, Mayor Johnson's chief of staff today warned there could be consequences for the CHA board. Seems like this could be a nasty legal battle, and, you know, CHA residents just caught in the middle.
Yeah, exactly, and I'm sure they would like some answers, because as it's been reported, there's a lot of issues about the conditions and quality of these housing units, so I'm sure they do want someone that they could turn to and really seek for answers for what's going on. So they're definitely caught in the middle of this, and it does seem like there possibly is going to be a legal challenge to this decision, so it could really drag on and be really messy for residents.
What is he looking for? What did the mayor want? And is there a person in particular? Or I don't understand the.
Yeah, he has been pushing now former Alderman Walter Burnett, a political ally who retired from the city council end of last July.
That sounds right. Yeah.
And he has not been able to be appointed because he has these conflict of interest issues that he needs waivers for that have not come from HUD, and that's kind of what drove this. You know, Brewer, this didn't come out of nowhere. Brewer has said during the fall, like, we need to move forward with an appointment. It doesn't appear Burnett is going to work. So that's the mayor's goal, and still appears to be his goal. But how he gets there, it's very confusing. I think it should be noted, this has been an agency that has not had a permanent leader since October of 2024.
Right.
Wow.
And it represents 65,000 households, the lowest income people in the city. And they have issues with their funding from the federal level. It's not a time to have a rudderless agency.
Yeah, and of course we saw this at the CTA as well, that the mayor tried to, you know, push through an appointment for a permanent leader that was not well received by board members.
Yeah, it didn't even make it onto a formal agenda.
Right.
So.
All right. Well, a couple pieces of national news we want to get to. Elvia, on President Trump's first day in office, he signed that executive order trying to undo birthright citizenship. It's enshrined in the Constitution, affirmed by the Supreme Court. Back before the Supreme Court this week, and the arguments from the administration didn't seem to get a warm reception from justices.
Not at all, and even from the justices that are considered conservative, appointed by Trump, even they seem skeptical of the government's arguments, and it really seemed, from the analysis that I've seen, it really seems unlikely that they will hold up President Trump's executive order limiting birthright citizenship. You know, some of the justices were really asking, like, how will this actually work? You know, are people going to have to go to hospital rooms to kind of figure out and verify who's a citizen, who intends to stay in the U.S.? So there's that aspect of it. But also, it just, you know, community leaders here were saying that the fact that President Trump actually went in and sat in and listened to some of these oral arguments, which was the first time that a sitting president had done that, it sends a message of this maybe could have been intimidation to really get what he wants. He's been very critical of the high court ever since they overturned his tariffs, and like you said, this was something he issued on the very first day of his second term, so it's something that obviously he really cares about.
And that's a good point. You know, he wanted to do this, or at least talked about it during his first term, and as we've seen with a lot of issues in his second term, he couldn't do that through the Congress in his first term. So now he's come back. This, I believe the executive order was on his first day in office.
It was.
Yes.
You know, and that is, maybe his supporters like that, but it's also, it's not, it doesn't, it's not the same as passing legislation. It doesn't come with the same longevity. It doesn't come with the same force. And it's something that really gets wishy-washy with the courts.
And it's one of the things that the justices brought up, right? When we talk about the 14th Amendment and the way it was intended to be used, I think they wanted to keep it away from Congress. And one of the justices did say that just for this reason in particular. Another thing that the Trump administration has pushed, and he himself on his social media account, saying that the U.S. is the only country that has birthright citizenship, and that's actually inaccurate, and dozens of countries also have it.
Yeah, and I mean, this notion of Trump showing up for oral arguments, breaking this long-standing precedent, Mike, do you think that could potentially, backfire on him? He hoped he could maybe sway with his personality.
I thought it kind of backfired in that particular moment, because Justin Roberts, who is a guy that very rarely allows his opinion out until he writes it, he apparently clapped back at one of the lawyers and said something about, it doesn't matter what you think is the law, it's the Constitution. And you rarely see him kind of show a little peak, and I thought he did in that moment.
Yeah, I don't think that they appreciated that. You know, there's separation of powers, and he's able to do that, but there's a reason why it was unprecedented, and I think it upset the justices.
And of course, sitting next to Pam Bondi, who the next day was out of the job, but that's politics.
Interesting guest choice there.
Indeed. All right, Elvia, another Trump executive order, this one ordering all Department of Homeland Security employees to be paid, not just TSA agents. Although Congress has yet to, actually finalize a deal to end this partial shutdown. You have to imagine federal employees who have now lived through multiple shutdowns in the past year are thinking about looking elsewhere for employment. In fact, many already have.
Yeah, definitely. And, I did check to see has there been any progress before I got here. Nothing. And it looks like maybe the closest progress we'll get is by mid-April when Congress returns. And so really we're seeing stories of, for example, food pantries being set up for federal workers, which seems just crazy because, you know, that's supposed to be a federal job has really been seen as a stable job in the U.S. with, you know, solid pay, solid benefits, and that's really being upended right now when they don't really know when they're going to get paid.
All right. Well, turning back to some local news, Chicago Police Superintendent Larry Snelling made a long-awaited appearance last night at a meeting of the city's Police Oversight Commission and got pretty contentious. Let's take a look.
Our officers showed up to keep down violence. It's okay. No, it's okay. This is the response I expected. It's easy to blame CPD when you're looking for somebody to blame. You say we protected ICE. Let me explain something to you. ICE needed no protection.
Araceli, does this feel like a meeting that, you know, nobody's going to walk away from happy? You know, the demonstrators aren't going to take Snelling at his word, and Snelling's not going to back down.
Yeah, I thought it was an interesting tone. You know, I think people were really heated, they were emotional. This was a very difficult time that Chicagoans just went through during this immigration enforcement, pretty aggressive immigration enforcement, I'll add. And I think that Superintendent Snelling was there to answer questions, and we spoke to him earlier that day on WBEZ, and he was very much for transparency, but I think he was met with a lot of emotion and answers, and a lot of times people are looking for specific answers that he might not be able to give.
Yeah, and you know, Justin, it was a pretty big lift just getting Snelling to show up to the meeting.
Yeah, there was some back and forth about he agreed to appear, and then they wanted to change it up a little bit and have a panel with outside experts, legal professors, and he bristled at that, right? He appeared to be, and he just wanted to take the questions themselves. I thought he made an interesting point in that saying that you know, complying with the city's welcome and city ordinance to not comply with federal officers was easier before this very aggressive crackdown. It's one thing to not work with them on releasing people from jail, but when they're out on the streets being really aggressive, going into neighborhoods, it put police officers in a tough position. And obviously there's a lot of people in the city that feel like they maybe blurred the lines of working with the feds.
And he himself said that people don't understand the welcoming ordinance, and I think that a lot of people were confused during that time. We saw people asking who's in charge, what can be done in these situations. So I do agree. I think people want to learn more, and I think he could let us know.
Yeah, but you know, you had folks calling for, you know, CPD, for example, to try and arrest federal immigration agents, which they do not have the authority to do.
Right.
All right, CPS board this week approved a 3-year contract to make Macklin King the permanent CEO. Just in one dissenting vote there, but otherwise harmonious.
Yes. The one dissenting vote, I will say, Jennifer Custer, she has already said she plans to run for school board president this year, and I think that she was maybe had a forward-looking vote there. I don't know. I think it's easy to predict a little bit of tension and maybe even chaos around the CPS budget and the ongoing, the upcoming year, and maybe it's not the new or acting and new CEO's fault, but during that campaign, Custer can say, "Hey, I'm the one that voted against all of this, whatever this is going to be in the coming months."
Yeah. And there was some pushback that maybe this process should have just waited until the elected president, you know, for the first time could be done. And I could see some reasons why maybe that would have been a good choice too. But of course, there was already a national search going on, so.
Right, and going on for many, many months with many rounds of, you know, reports of candidates and folks dropping out. So it was a bit of a hectic process at times. All right, Elvia, you had a piece this week digging into the rise in HIV/AIDS rates among Latinos in Chicago. What did you find there?
Yeah, we started looking into this in February. The federal government cut back on public health programs, and one of the programs was HIV funding. And what I was hearing from a lot of community groups was they were very concerned because this was happening as actually Chicago was seeing more HIV cases, in particular among Latinos. And I talked to health officials in Chicago who they said they are looking into what is behind this. One clue could be just the ripple effect of COVID-19. People maybe lost their health insurance, are delaying care, and are just kind of getting back to that. Another could be the migration pattern that happened here in Chicago, in which we saw thousands of folks who were bused from Texas, from the border, by Republican Texas Governor Greg Abbott. So that population maybe didn't know their status. Maybe this was the first time they had access to testing, access to care. And so really a lot of groups are calling for more funding, but the problem is that a lot of groups are facing, they kind of know they can't really count on federal funds, and so they're really turning to the state and the local government, but everyone else is also turning to them for funds.
Yeah, I mean, is there any way at the state and local level or the philanthropic level to try and make up that gap?
Yeah, I mean, there is an effort for the state to increase its budget to pay specifically for HIV prevention, but also for a program that essentially if you test positive for HIV, you could get on medication and they help you, for example, roll in the ACA or get on Medicaid. And that's really key because if you're on this medication and you stay on it, you could become undetectable. And that means that you're not transmitting HIV to someone else. Right. And so that's really a huge advancement in science and really important.
And unfortunately, with more federal funding cuts coming our way, we're at the cusp of Medicaid being cut.
Exactly.
These are just kind of things that I feel like waterfall down. People that most need some of these resources are the ones that are going to be most affected.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, and even though right now there are some resources, I was also hearing that people are scared because they don't want the federal government to have their information. They don't know what's going to happen with it down the line. So there's still that fear too.
Yeah, but we've seen, unfortunately, a lot of things that were trending positively start to go back in the other direction in the public health arena. All right, well, switching gears to some very good news for a lot of fans here. Mike, the Illini are in Indianapolis. They're getting ready to take on UConn tomorrow at 5. How do you like Illinois' chances?
I really think they've got more than a legitimate shot. They're favored in the game, I believe, by 1.5 points. You wouldn't know if you were in Illinois because you're not allowed to bet them. But in Vegas, they got them as a 1.5 favorite. They lost to UConn earlier in the year, but the difference is that since that time, they're playing so much better, and they are such a better basketball team. And I think Wagler scored 3 points in that game. He's averaging 17 in the tournament. He's a different player. He's a top 10 pick in the NBA draft. And I think Illinois is going to get to the final. That's just my opinion. But I don't know that they're going to win the final because the other two teams are absolutely phenomenal. I'm talking about Michigan and Arizona. So I think the winner of that game would probably be the favorite come Monday. But UConn is really interesting because of their experience and the fact that they've won titles. But, man, they shouldn't be here. I mean,
that buzzer beater.
It was so jammy. There's no way around it. They got very lucky. It almost felt like Duke lost the game as much as Illinois, or excuse me, as UConn won it.
I was going to say maybe the entirety of the country hoping that shot went in. Maybe one pulled it in, everybody outside of Duke fans.
Yeah.
I'm really just hoping that Coach Underwood can push through, pick up his team. And I will agree with Mike that they're a different team now, specifically defensively. They've been playing great defense. And if they can get to the final, I mean, it's been 21 years since the last time they did that, so it would be great.
And it was interesting listening to Underwood's press conference earlier today, and he was saying, UConn is a team that we've seen before. We know that they're not just going to lay down, but we can be ready for that. And we know the kind of ball they play, and we could, they at least have, these few days, but a precious few days to work with, to prep.
And Illinois is huge, and they could dominate the
It's the
boards.
tallest team in
Yes.
the NCAA. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. What do you think about Michigan, Arizona? What are you looking for there?
I haven't watched enough Arizona. I've watched Arizona. I've watched Michigan all year. Michigan, to me, is playing better than any team in the country. They've scored a minimum of 90 points every game in the tournament, and they've got the best. They got a sixth-year senior in Ledneborg, who is probably the dominant player of the tournament. He's not as good a future pro maybe as Wagler is, but I think that's going to be an excellent game. Arizona has no obvious. Like, Michigan has shot 44% on threes. The number one team in the country shot 41% on threes. So the danger would be if all of a sudden they start evening out, that could be a problem for them. But I like Michigan.
I made fun of Duke there, so I should acknowledge that that I went to Tennessee, and Tennessee played Michigan in the Elite Eight and lost by 79 points. I forget what it was.
Anything
I turned
can
it
happen.
off.
Anything can happen
I just
in
want to
this
say you
tournament.
can always make fun of Duke on this show. That's fine. All right, we've got two Hoosiers at the table
right,
here.
yeah.
Rooting for Illinois, even though you're IU grad?
I am rooting for Illinois. I wanted to pick a Midwest team, and so Michigan also an option, but I rather go for Illinois.
I think if it'll be good for the state, I'm for it.
There we go.
Yeah.
IU just a football school.
Can you believe it?
Yeah, doing all right as a football school, but all right. NFL owners meetings. We heard the Bears say they're going to announce late spring, early summer, whether they go to Arlington Heights or Hammond. Do you think it's going to take that long? Maybe we'll know sooner?
I think it's probably going to be when the Illinois legislature comes back. If they give them what they're looking for out in Arlington Heights, I think Arlington Heights is probably the preferred place. And I know they got to borrow a lot of money, but I think the franchise will be worth a lot more. What they're being offered in Indiana is incredible. I mean, it's a free building, and if they're there for 30 years, they then own it, and there's no taxes, anything. But I think Michael McCaskey was raised by Virginia, who, when she talked to her children, she let them know that they were protecting her father's legacy. It's George Hallis's legacy. And I've always had a hard time imagining George Hallis McCaskey moving the team out of state. I have a hard time seeing him doing it because this is the way he was raised. Now, he spoke differently at the owners' meeting than he has. I don't know if that's because he got some really good PR advice and people like myself have been saying things like this, but I thought there was like a little change in tone, which probably is needed to kickstart Illinois. Yes, that too.
Trying not heavy-handed in terms of.
No, they're not. They weren't heavy-handed,
right.
but they let Roger Goodell kind of play the heavy for them.
I will tell you, Nick, I mean, Elvie and I are both from Indiana, and if you ask anyone from Indiana, it's happening.
Right.
Yeah, I was going to say, if this happens, this will be the biggest, best thing that ever happened to Northwest Indiana. It will carry us through whatever happens.
The mayor of Hammond would be very happy.
Yeah, they already think they're staking out the site
That's
there. All right, White Sox had a 1-5 start heading into their rain-delayed homeowner. Beautiful day today, and a beautiful win for them in extra
It
innings.
was a really Good Friday for the White Sox. They actually managed to score 2 runs in extra innings after going down a run in extra innings, and they won a game, and it was extraordinary. They also announced after the game they're retiring Ozzie Guillen's number 13, which should have been done long ago. So I think that it was a great day for the White Sox.
And was that a surprise? Was that a surprise?
No,
for you?
they've been
Okay.
waiting to
do it.
unleash it, but they had yet to do it. So we were all
You mentioned Good Friday.
Oh,
Is there anybody in Rome that might?
I was going to say,
might be
yeah,
playing
White Sox fans
in
overtime.
throwing up some prayers.
You probably didn't see it. The Cleveland diocese released a letter yesterday, basically letting the fans know they were not going to allow them to eat hot dogs at their home opener, which the Cubs, they were beating the Cubs when last we checked.
Yeah, maybe they need some vegan hot dogs for Meatless Fridays. All right, well, Guillen getting retired. If the 4 of you had a number, we'd retire it. You're all great, but we are out of time. So our thanks to Justin Lawrence, Araceli Gomez-Aldana, Elvia Malagon, and Mike Mulligan. We're back to wrap things up right after this.
Tonight's presentation of Week in Review is made possible in part by Ann and Rich Carr, BNSF Railway, and Francine and Dr. Anthony Brown. Chicago Tonight is made possible in part by the Alexandra and John Nichols family, the Polk Brothers Foundation. Additional support is provided by
And that's our show for this Friday night. Visit our website for the latest from WTTW News, including an effort by the Chicago Park District to make summer camp registration less like the Hunger Games. Now for the Week in Review, I'm Nick Blumberg. Thank you for watching. Stay healthy, stay safe, and stay informed. Have a great weekend. All right, Araceli, you had probably the most important story of the week.
Very important.
Reporting on some,
I'm glad you are mentioning
some new residents at Brookfield Zoo. Tell us about that.
Very cute African painted puppies, 10 of them. First-time mom who also was born at Brookfield Zoo, which was a fun fact. And usually a first-time mom only has about 7 or 8. She had 10.
Wow.
5 males, 5 females. They were so cute.
And this is a species that Brookfield's helping to conserve.
That's right, because they are endangered. So in Africa, they're one of the most endangered predators. They are a smaller mammal, so they get, it's hard for them, and they need a lot of space. So Brookfield Zoo has got 10 new residents.
Small dogs, but very big ears, as we can see from the video
That's
here.
what made them so cute.
And they seem to be having a great time exploring their new little habitat there.
Yeah, they were very.
Closed captioning is made possible by Robert A. Clifford and Clifford Law Offices, a Chicago personal injury and wrongful death firm with more than 40 years of experience in medical malpractice.